Hi, I'm Paul Roberts, and this is Conscious Counseling 101. And today we have a letter that I'd like to try to help somebody with. I always do this generically and openly so that anybody else that finds us and is looking for this type of subject could also possibly benefit. And I'm going to do this off the cuff as I normally do. And some of the things you might hear, you might go, that takes a lot of faith. This guy might be off. But I'm going to get into some of the things that we can't actually see and know today. And I just want you to consider them because they could be real. And if they are real, they could be gains that can help you. And so I'm talking about these things as extra what ifs. There's always medication. There's always like just sorting through your troubles. But I'm going to talk about some what ifs today too. I'll just read off some of this letter so that we know what's being asked in the first place. 1 year ago, I had an anxiety panic attack. I had never had any issues with anxiety. The physical symptoms felt like what a heart attack is often described as. I called the doctor's office to make an appointment, and they said I needed to hang up and call 911 for an ambulance that came out to my work. Scary, as I've never had any serious health issues before. This kicked off what has been the worst year I've had to date. I did not have a heart attack, and I was actually quite healthy overall after the tests. They described it was anxiety, and I have lived with that for the last year. Something I had previously been skeptical of as a real issue. I was given different medications and counseling, but it did not help. The meds actually made things quite worse and were too weird for me. So I got myself off of them and sought more alternative means with guided meditations, affirmations, and homeopathic supplements, rather than prescription meds. That worked much better. I think I've nailed it down to just getting older and the changes that brings with age. I had a scare with my mother last year who went to the hospital, and on the same day I had the aid car show up at my work. Although I did not know about her until the next day, that kicked off a series of issues with her and my stepfather to where she disowned me, in quotes, for many months. Then in the fall, I lost my real father to cancer and had his low-life, druggy brother steal his entire cash estate from the bank while I was processing the probate. The ensuing legal battle cost me my savings and ultimately resulted me not being able to recover the funds without putting even more money up. The police said that it was a civil matter. The attorney seemed helpful, but it was only really helping himself in the end. The issues strung out over the year, and they have led to severe emotional breakdowns for me and some deep anger that I had never felt before. I had always been an upbeat and positive, kind of young at heart, yet manly man kind of guy, and this was not anything that I have ever experienced before. I know the meds I was on had something to do with it, intensifying it, but it also began before them. I get waves of it, and I have a hard time physically talking, vocalizing about my issues. Hence this wall of text. I think you did a really good job talking about it. It's very obvious to me, at least, what you're going through, and so I think it's very clear. I know in my heart, he goes on to say that there are worse things that could be happening, and they're not. I have many blessings in life, and I'm thankful every day for them. Family, good job, good health, physically, etc. But I'm having a hard time trying to shake these feelings of dread and fear that come up and settle in my chest and stomach, like right before the drop on a roller coaster or something. Trying to find out what the heck is going on and get back to my real self. Thank you for the week of your time you probably took to read all this. I appreciate the kindness and willingness that you have to share it. Okay, well, it's not really about kindness and willingness. What it is I must, because I've had it brought to my conscious that this is what I am and who I am and what I'm about. And so I don't know if it's kindness, I don't know if it's willingness. I see this as servitude. And I'm happy to do the servitude, not because I'm kind or special or willing or above anybody else, but because I'm consciously aware of the need for it and the value of it. And so I become able to mold myself into what I am because I see it as the highest possible calling. And so, if anything, you could say I'm arrogant because I've placed myself in servitude because it's humble. My namesake Paul in the New Testament, he says that to the point of extreme to where it's almost boasting. But I'm only mentioning this because you said that I was kind and willing. I'm I'm willing because I know this is what my purpose is. Okay, so let's get into these things. All right. Just inject one little thing on my own so that you know that I can identify with you. I don't have any vices like things that that make me fall, or that I have to go to something extreme like medications or counseling. I do my own counseling. I do my own medication. My own medication is done. This is what. Well, before I get into that, let me just say this. I did not ask you. I asked you only your age and whether you had any religious beliefs. You said from a child you had, and you hadn't necessarily thrown them away, but you're not involving yourself deeply in them either. But in the time that we're living in right now, everything is on the surface and obvious, and there's a lot of anxiety that a lot of people are having. And I would go so far as to say it's on both sides of the political spectrum, but you only hear about it from the one side. The other side's feeling it too, but don't know what to do, and they don't want to lose out as they could if they don't watch their steps. I never was involved in politics or cared, because I thought, well, we lived in a free country, everything was going to be fine, and we had checks and balances, everything was going to be fine, and I didn't have any anxiety. My anxiety that I did maybe have was how I'm going to run my life with my wife and children, and how God is going to guide our life, and the difficulties that the outward world presented. You know, we lived through the 911, we lived through the financial collapse. Right about those times, we both were holding properties that we're working very hard on renovating, and we had a chance to do more than just artists do, and get to the point where we had some foundations underneath us ourselves, like a doctor or a lawyer or a regular person like that, and those were ripped out from underneath us. And so we worked really hard like anybody else, and those were gone. Well, now we are older. We don't have the ability to start all that over again, even though I have purchased another house and I'm renovating it, because as an artist, one of the things I've always done, one of my last professors in school told me, you'll never get anywhere in art. Make sure you're involved in real estate. Well, I don't have any extra money to involve myself in real estate. But one time I did have some extra money, and we were transitioning, and the lady next door to us fell and hurt herself and had to go out to an assisted living place. And we actually found ourselves with 3 houses at one point. We were trying to manage them and renovate them, and we put our cash there rather than in the savings. It's just as well, because the stock market crashed as well. When the stock market crashed, we still had what we had because it was physical, but we couldn't afford it because after the crash, we didn't have the means and the funds. And we were trying to refinance, but when the president gave a special thing about you can refinance your home rather than going under, the banks had to comply, but they looked for any loophole they could. So we had our finance rate fixed in. We were going to refinance, and everything was going to be fine. But the rates had a little swelling, and even though we were locked in, the bank made an excuse that, the person we're supposed to renew your thing, but they didn't. We fired her, though, don't worry. But we lost our rate. So what we had to do is we had to lose one of our houses because of this bank doing this. And this really hurt us. And then we said, okay, you know what? It's time for the kids to have some opportunities. We came out to California. And why am I saying all this? I'm trying to show you where my anxiety came from. And we wanted to try to rebuild our life so that they would have an opportunity. This is a crucial time in our life. We don't have the money to send them to the schools and things like that because it's all been ripped away from us. And then when we got out to California, even though there are opportunities for them, everything's more expensive. So we sold everything we had just to live in a mobile home park. And then things swelled, and we made a little bit of money, and we're now doing a fixer-upper. But we don't have the money in our pockets. We don't have the money in our hands. It's all investment in the future. Like, if I can fix this house up and everything stays good, and we don't have wars or nuclear attacks or earthquakes or whatever, then maybe I'll have a chance. See, it was before where, I was going to have a chance. We had insurance. Everything was going to work out. But all that assuredness from all our hard work in our youth was all ripped away from the corruption that happened in the loosening of the loopholes in Wall Street when the towers fell, so that everything could be built again. But all that was put in the hands of the wealthy. It wasn't really to help the people like us that were really working hard and making America what it was. So I have a lot of anxiety because now every single day I live with the idea that even though I worked hard and I had a solid base and I had always been an upstanding citizen, these things were taken away from me. I'm placed in a place that The only reason I am even making it is because I'm so flexible, and I can renew myself, and I can look at things from different perspectives. And I have this conscious counseling that I offer to others. I do it to myself. It's very valuable. And no matter what the world throws at us, I can respond in a way where I can survive and in some ways thrive, but not thrive financially, because that's not my goal. I remember you said you watched that last video I did. So what our goal is to be everything we can be as whole individuals. So I have a lot of anxiety, and with the way the divisiveness of our leadership right now is causing people to be, what's happening is all the things are coming to the surface of what really always was there, but it just needed to be stimulated so that everybody could see it. I always say, we'd be at civil war right now if there was some way where half the nation was living here that thought this way and half the nation was living here that thought this way. But because we're all mixed, there's a lot of anxiety, because something like civil war would happen if it could, but how can it? Thank goodness we're not in the age where we have microchips inside of us and different things like that, and somebody with on the hands on the button can turn them off and turn them on based on things like that. I'm very against high-tech stuff because I know that in the end they would if they could, and I believe that science fiction movies we used to watch that used to show these things are becoming more real. And I have anxiety every day because I know now that I'm not living in that age. But I'm seeing all the signs around me from my conscious understanding of what could happen, and I'm seeing man's propensity to want to make it happen if he could. And so I never was into politics, but I'm allowing politics to come into my living room every night. For the last 2 years, I have watched everything that's been happening. I did read the paper a little bit when the towers fell and Bush was in charge. But now I let everything into my living room. I see the sound bites, I see the actual video. It's not just news. I see the actual video footage of what's actually happening. And I have a lot of anxiety. But I'm able to stabilize it without meds. How do I do that? This is where we get into you. Conscious Counseling 101 is to help someone develop the ability to do what I've developed the ability to do, which is to be heightened conscious and aware so that what comes in is placed where it needs to be, filtered where it needs to be, considered how it needs to be, and allowed to work for you, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. And what is the working? What does that mean? Here's what it is. This is the stuff I was talking about at the beginning that you might think is outrageous. The brain, and there's quantum physics, infinite small. There's the universe, possibly infinite large. We don't know. Our telescopes and our technology can't show us either one of those directions. But what we do believe, and even though I haven't seen man on the moon, I believe the moon is there and we've been to it. I believe the earth is round. There's still people who don't believe that. And I believe that it's possible that people don't believe in quantum physics. I happen to believe it is because I think the ability to try to fool you would require way more energy than just believing it, because if you read about it, it just makes sense. But let's say we believe in those things. Let's believe that you're a sound person and you're on common ground with me, and you believe in quantum physics and the universe and what we know of it. You believe in those things. So if that's the case, we're not solid matter. We're made of energy and light and more things than we even understand, beyond the physicality of the actual structures that actually seem to have mass, even though they may not have mass. Our brain is electrically and chemically flexing, okay? It's doing all kinds of things. Now, what happens is when you use a med, it affects those things. But the med doesn't have any intelligence. The med just kind of like puts a uniform, if I was an artist, I'd say a uniform brush stroke, like kind of like a phase of tranquility perhaps, or if another one is, just each one does a little bit of thing. But what they do is just kind of a wash of something. And the hoping is that if you looked at a graph and if you had a graph of your electrical and your chemical stimulation in your brain, it would like cut off the highs and the lows. Kind of like if you're doing in a sound recording and your highs and lows are going off the chart, but you want the music to sound loud, you want to hear the lows, and you want to bring the sounds down a little bit that are too high, you compress it. So what what the medications can do is they can take those highs and those lows. I don't know if they necessarily can compress it, but they can chip those off. They can fly away, and you're left with just the median. You're left just with the median, and hopefully your difficulties aren't so bad that the median that you're left with can be more handleable. This is why drugs are prescribed. Of course, I don't want to get into how the whole health care industry right now makes money only off of our suffrage and our bad health, and how it really is all motivated by how it can make money. Of course, you have to actually serve somebody in some way to have something justified that you're going to buy it, right? So we know there's something being given to you. And we know a lot of people have these anxiety issues. You went off the charts. You became concerned. You subscribed. Didn't work necessarily the first time. You tried a few other things. Thought it was working better. But you kept looking. And you knew about me, so you finally talked to me. So what I'm trying to say is this wash that you get from the meds can help somebody maybe if they're not too far off. If they're pretty solid, they got what they need in life, physicality, health, good job, family, things like that, probably be okay. Could be an aid, like a crutch, okay? But here's where conscious counseling comes in. Without any of that guesswork of a med and a washing and clipping or compressing the tops and the bottoms, you can do that without the med through conscious counseling and heightened conscious. Because what you do is every single day, well, just think of it, even when you sleep and you wake up, you got a little bit of a reset. Everything else is still there, but you're renewed a little bit. And you lose memories a little bit as you go through time, if you don't concentrate on them and try to remember them. So in that way, you see that each new day is a new thing, a little bit of a new thing, but it also has the old. What you do is, with conscious counseling, you take in every single thing and you examine it much more closely, and you don't throw anything away and think it's irrelevant. And by doing this, what you do is all the old things that would tend to go down or away, that didn't keep calling their attention to yourself, would become less relevant and more muted. And all the things that you're focusing on, you become more skillful at analytical thinking and focusing on them, and you'll categorize those in your filter and put them where they need to be in a much more higher level than you ever did before you were skilled and before you practiced this. And so what you're going to do now is you're going to have everything else that your life was composed of start to go down, and everything that you're now composing your life of start to go up. And it's going to become a larger portion every single day of what you have. A much more considered thing is now going to be your collective baggage that you have every day in an organized manner, while everything that wasn't considered will slowly start to dissolve away. Or you can throw it away by dismissing it because you saw that it had no value. You saw it for what it is and you dismissed it. Well, this process of doing this is kind of an inner looking of what somebody that has a heightened conscious with Conscious Counseling 101 tools is doing. Now, what is this doing? What are you ultimately doing? You are affecting the chemical and the electrical signals in your brain as you think. And you're affecting them in a way so that when you think about this, all the ways it relates to everything else will eventually, when you think about this, relate more. And then this, and this, and this, and this. You'll start to see correlations between everything that you categorized. You'll start to see why these things are important. And if you do it well, they'll start to harmonize, and you'll start to see a heightened conscious, clearer picture. Now, how do you do it well? All the things that, by the way, again, like I say, all the things that you don't consider or that you put aside will start to lose that electrical signal or that chemical balance, and will become less. Now you're more a product of your own creation of what you've done. And when you have done this, you can start to trust more because you've done what you've done. I alluded to this in the other video, and there's some other videos that also allude to this. You now are real. You're a product of your own creation. And what you were before you were unconsidered or what were heightened conscious is becoming less and less all the time. Just your desire to see this and do it makes it start to happen. The rest of the time is the processing of it and the understanding what you're doing and becoming better at it. But here's the key, and this is where you've got to have a little bit of faith in something that may not be real, but I believe it is. But just say for a second, for the sake of argument, that it's not real. I can tell you whether it's real or not, it actually works. That's very important. Now, you can't believe me. I don't want you to believe me. I don't want you to follow me. I want you to find these things out for yourself. But how do you know that what you're systemizing and organizing is any good? I mean, let's take an example of somebody that's extreme, like somebody that really hates. And they want to find, they're fearful and they're doubtful and skeptical of people that are unlike them. And they say, everything like you that I can see and label must be wrong because you're coming in and you're doing this to us and you're making our life less. And so I'm gonna make everything I'm about to say whenever I see in my filtering device, whenever I see a person like you, I'm going to make everything about you be categorized on this shelf. Irrelevant. We don't want that. But we're going to keep a nice file on people like you so that we always recognize that, become stronger, right? And then everything like this political persuasion that we don't like, we don't agree with it, but we're going to keep a file of it. We're going to know what's happening. It's okay to do those things. But if you don't realize that you're doing them, and you don't realize that that's for reference only on those couple of files like that, and you become inculcated into it, you can become like, white supremacists, KKK, something like that. I'm just using that as an example because it's in the news right now, the shootings and stuff like that. And you can think that this world is part of your world. And if you didn't make that boundary of that separation, well, no, that's just reference. It's not my world. And you don't take that fear out of you and that anxiety out of you and realize that you're not in that world. You are now the master of your own domain, and you're categorizing these things so you can reference them and see them and learn from them and grow and be intelligent. Then what's going to happen is you'll become intertwined with these things. They'll wrap you and they'll take you down. They'll push you down. And this will heighten your anxiety and your fear. And instead of clipping those tops and bottoms of that wave that goes through in our life and our mindset and the chemical reactions and everything, will allow the flow of those things to come in and heighten the highs and lower the lows if we can't buffer ourselves. Now, what helps guide us towards the buffering? This is the controversial point, and this is why so much of the world is lost and on the broad road. So many people don't believe that man was given the ability to govern this stuff in their minds because there's no higher entity that can show them the light. And that's all some old textbook somewhere. That's all some old thing that was written by people that are irrelevant and inconsequential. There were other people that were powerful in the world, like the Egyptians, and we don't listen to what they say. So why should we listen to other people that were written down in this big book that we have that nobody reads? Why should we listen to any of that stuff? Well, you can go back to some of the very, very early videos where I first started to come to try to rediscover what I knew and what I didn't know, and become stronger in the sense that I knew I was taking charge of my own life. One of the things was I never threw the baby out with the bathwater. I never said, I got to this point and I'm not happy with myself. I'm going to rebuild myself, but I'm going to start all fresh. No. I kept the possibility that the baby, or that man had a design or a created insight from a higher thing than themselves was possibly available to us. I kept that. A lot of people throw it away. They become atheists. They just say, okay, everything wasn't working before, I'm starting over again. And this is one of the problems, and this is also one of the reasons for polarization. Why did everybody on this side see it this way and everybody sees it this side? There's nowhere in the middle. I submit to you that the middle way, and you have some other religions that talk about this middle way. The middle way will, if you go towards that, will help you to see the two extremes. Like I have some people in my family that are extreme conservatives. When they look down that spectrum from left to right, from conservative to liberal or radical or whatever you want to call it, and you look down that thing, depth of field, you can't really see depth of field as well as you can when it's stretched out and you look at it from the other way. Everything to somebody that's on the extreme looks closer, no matter how far it is, it looks closer than it really is. And when you turn it sideways, you go, oh, wait, that guy was there and this guy was way over here. But to me, they look so close. The middle way is about seeing the all-encompassing perspective and realizing just all the juxtapositions. I go further and I say that it's not a band, it's a cone that is like a probability curve that goes up, and it's three-dimensional always and even goes down. Okay? That's how my right and left spectrum looks. So when I do my filing system, everything is coming from the extreme central point, the most I can get myself at any given day based on all my other prior experiences, and that's extreme central point. So everything I look at is going to be the most even-keeled way of looking at it I possibly can, and nothing's going to throw me off with my perspective looking at that down that line in a bad way just because it feels good. Oh, I'm okay. I'm over here with my boys. I'm safe and I'm good. Those people are outside. Whatever that is to you, it's different for everybody. That's bad perspective. In Conscious Counseling 101, we teach people these things. We teach people about these tools. We overcome these tools as soon as we see the logic of this instantaneously. You don't have to spend months with me. If anything I'm doing is effective, you'll see it immediately, and then you'll make change. Now, what's the baby of the bathwater I was talking about? The idea that there's something outside of ourselves that's larger than us, okay? Well, now we know we are limited perspective. We can only see forward, or if we turn our head, we can see that way. We can use some tools we make, and we can see radio waves and measure quantum physics and all these different things, and look out into the telescope and see what the universe looks like. We can use these things, but ourselves alone, we have limited perspective. Our eyesight is maybe 1/60th of a second with a shutter speed, maybe 30th of a second. Our visual spectrum is very limited compared to how much there is on the actual spectrum that could be seen through instrumentation or other things. If we're dim and we're unconscious and we're hateful and we're looking at everything the way I was talking about before, we get even dimmer. I mean, we might be a physical athlete and have strong sensibilities and still be dim, and we think, oh, we can rule the world. You know, we feel immortal. But no, we're not. We're limited. We're limited in perspective. So when I say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, you have to first believe that there's some other thing bigger than us that allows us to have a greater insight if we're willing and open to it. And so I trust in what I found to be the highest thing personally on my path, which was Jesus' teachings. That's what the road took me. And I can't find anything erroneous about them. And of course, don't just go running over there and study them and try to throw out whatever you can, because if you don't understand the whole context, this is a lifelong journey. If you just go in there and try to find something, you could take anything you want and you could say, well, it means this. And you could be so slanted, just like you were if you're looking down that line. You could be so slanted. You've got to understand the context. You've got to understand the context. You've got to understand the whole meaning of it. That's the baby that you don't want to throw out with the bathwater. Now, let's say you're not religious and you haven't made your whole life about this. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to. If God was so infinite and so powerful, he wouldn't need you to be so regimented that you see things only one way. He'd allow for all of creation and all the design and all the ways that you think and feel and act and all the chemicals and the electrodes and everything in your brain. He'd allow for all these things to be within your control and your design to serve you well rather than being against you or being unbeknownst to you. This is what conscious counseling is. Even if those entities that you thought you believed in or you wanted to believe in or thought would be helpful if you believed or said you believed or whatever, wore certain labels and badges and feathers in their cap that some people wear, you don't have to subscribe to a view that man has already dumbed down of what that's supposed to look like so that you don't get judged or feel like an idiot. Any way that you go towards it can be one of grace. Any way that you find can be one where it's freely given. You don't have to feel limited or stifled. If you go towards it, even if it didn't exist, and I'm not saying it doesn't because I don't know. I'm not saying it does because I don't know. I believe it does, and I label it as such because the things that it's made of, when I look at it and describe it, do work. They do something. And that's why I do Conscious Counseling 101, and I believe Jesus said he's the light of the world and where to follow, because consciousness, people, like I said earlier, made of light, energy, they're not solid. I find, even though these people back then didn't have the science to know those things, the words and the suggestive parables and thoughts about comparing the kingdom of heaven to the kingdom of earth and the non-physical realm and the physical realm were so intuitive, even though they didn't have any scientific stuff whatsoever. I submit to you that that is proof that they did know something. But here's the thing. Let's say they didn't. Let's say they were just lucky and this is all coincidental. If you take all that religion out of it, you take all those things out of it, you're left with just the devices you'd been doing every day, with just the hope that they're true. They would still work, even if they weren't true, because they're so intuitively designed into the fabric of the creation of the universe and the things that we can perceive and see without aid of anything beyond ourselves. And I believe this is why Jesus says, one of the biggest penalties, besides judging one another, lest you be judged, is to not stop the little children from coming to me If they asked for a glass of water and you refused them, you would be better off having the large millstone tied around your neck and thrown into the ocean. Why? Why? Because these people aren't jaded. These children, this children's spirit is still about this inquisitive, let's look, let's find. They haven't been pushed down by the evils of man yet. It's natural to explore and do what we call conscious counseling. And Jesus realized that his best opportunity was not to take those that were already jaded and deluded by man's evils and try to reach them, although some were able to see through. But his best chance was to see those that were truly open or truly shut out. And he knew that it was about the creative nature of the person to be inquisitive and to search and openly receive before they became tarnished. Now, let's talk about your tarnish. Your tarnish is like many of us. We're pushed down by the evils of mankind, our circumstances, our feeling like we can't possibly get past this because there's so much stacked against us. These create our waveform to go larger. Some people succumb to meds. You're not going to succumb to meds unless you want to. Listen, don't put your faith in me. If I'm wrong, I would have misled you. I don't want you to put your faith in me. I don't want to be wrong and have you mislead or even get it wrong. But what I'm saying is think and consider these things. Because they're things that others you'll find won't come and talk to you about them. Why? Because I bring them from a place highly considered. I've spent a life highly analyzing these things. And furthermore, I believe this has to do with the narrow road that few people are on and the things that the people that do find that level have had to do in order to find that level. And I share them openly because if a person would look and search and find, which is what you probably did, I think I found you through one of the bat communities I was in. You just knew me as a person first. Okay. The main way to find me is to go on the internet and search for something that only someone that is looking would search for. So very few find me. Notice my numbers are low. I'm not about controversial stuff, stirring the pot, being an internet guru, being a YouTube star, making money. None of those things. Because those people that would respond to those things are on the broad road paved towards destruction. And I don't want anything to do with them unless they come and want help. Then I want everything to do with them. If there was a way that I could reach them, see, they're not perceptive. If there was a way I could reach them, I probably would. But these big people you see that are these great big people that are like gurus and pastors and self-help people and stuff like that, that make money and stuff, and they have these huge organizations following them, and all over the place are sending money, and they're blind to the servitude of these people. They're, in my opinion, way off. Jesus says you can't serve money and God both, and they can't hardly help but serve the money, and that's the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. We need to understand some of these things as truths. And when we categorize them with those other things I was talking about, categorizing them earlier, don't always say, yeah, but I don't know, and let that be a conflict for you, because then you throw the baby out with the bathwater. These truths I'm talking to you about now, my philosophy, I don't know, is true. We don't know them, but they become more and more probable and in focus and more likely. They can become those things if you're not restrictive towards them. You have to become more aware of how you got to where you are. And the forces that got you there, were they loving forces? Were they nurturing forces? Were they enlightened forces? What the forces were less than maybe the best they could be in your life. Maybe you and your guidance, you said you saw some things earlier in life and you were not opposed to religion, but you didn't follow those things. Don't get me started on the formalized church. There's a lot of people there that are broken. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people there that are searching too, and it doesn't mean that you can't gain something out of that. I gained a lot. Hey, if nothing else, I gained what was wrong and analyzing it and figuring out what the truth was when I looked at Jesus' words, using it as an example. But what I'm saying is, if you can't realize and be truthful with yourself and know where you came from, you can't make gains. And if you didn't have a life of nurturing and supplement to help you and aid you, and you weren't strong enough on your own, you found yourself where you weren't looking for anything until you succumbed to the worst year of your life and you were worried for your own self and your balance. That is not age. There are people like that are very young. There are people like that that are very old. Age has nothing to do with it. Age did used to bring wisdom when the world was harder. And you'd go to the Indian chiefs and the knowledgeable old professors, and you'd find things. They suffered through and endured a hard world, and they had to obtain earthly wisdom to get through it, maybe non-earthly wisdom too. That's not the way. We're living in a world of creature comforts. We're living in a world where you can get through by being shifty, crafty, and evil, and finding ways to have sustainability for yourself. And you do not have to be wise or gifted to live long. And just because you're succumbing to difficulties doesn't mean that you're less at any age. There are so many difficulties to trip up on and to be anxious about. But let's get back as we finish this for right now. There's lots more I can say on this, but I try to keep this to the point where if it's not you and someone else is listening, they're still getting something out of it before I go off too far out of the way and lose somebody. While you are doing what I'm telling you, and having the confidence or faith that these higher things may also exist and not throwing them out, and you categorize those and keep those in places. If they have to become reference at first rather than central core, okay, but keep them as possible central core. Keep them a little bit closer in. Could easily shift over to central core if you saw eventually that they did make a lot more sense than these other extraneous things that were troublesome and problematic. Even if you don't think they're absolutely believable and true and provable, they still could become central core, because I think that you're going to find that the baby is still going to help you more than the bathwater. Even if you have to not call it a baby. I think there's so many things there that help you to do the categorization. What you're going to do, and the most tangible and practical means by doing this, is in your brain, the chemicals and the electricity things are going to go off, and they're going to help one another signal this categorization process. And you're going to start to become more and more aware of what's most probable, most likely, most good, most essentially designed into what would be the best for us to have, or the designed, if you want to use the religious terms, goodness versus the antithetical away from what the will of God is, the badness or evil. You want to say, well, what is a creator? What's the design of that creation look like? Let's say you don't believe in the creation. Let's say it's just the form. Okay, look at the tangible physicality of the universe and the person and the mind. If you just want to throw that away so you feel more comfortable, that's fine. You can do that too. What do we know about ourselves? What is this vehicle for taking this in and diagnosing it? And what is against it, or has nothing to do with it, but also onslaughts us? We have to learn to make a division, an accurate division between those things, so that we don't become entrapped and think that it is part of us when it's not. It's outward. It's outside. We have to be a careful surgeon. So we take everything in. We got to do it fast. We got to do it fast, not just a careful surgeon or delicate. It comes in like a deluge, especially in our world now with the social media and the news and the lying and the polarization of everything. It comes in really fast. We have to get really skillful really quickly. What's the best way I can tell you to get skillful really quickly? What I'm doing right now. Calling your attention to this. If you take the step that you believe this is real and happening, that's the conscious counseling perspective shift. You can do it instantly. If I can find through my visual acuity and my analytical artistic nature a way to show you or paint a picture for you that no one else can paint, that's most likely what's happening, forget about what all the channels and the movies and the news and the books and all the other philosophers and gurus and whatever are saying. If you can see something through my artistry that is most likely true and real and profitable for you, even if you want to label it or paint it as something else so that it'll work for you, then you can make the paradigm shift of the perspective counseling shift right now. And then the rest of it will all just be your active duty of doing what I've described here. And by having those chemicals and electronic things going on in the mind become more evenly keeled, assembled, you'll clip the bottom and the tops of those things. And no matter how jumbled this mess is, it'll still be a handleable mess that won't require meds, because the extremes will be pushed down, you could call it compression, to a handleable mess. If you clip those outside things off and pile them in places like the to-do list thing, say, I can't even figure this out now, I'm not knowledgeable enough, or I'm not aware of this, I can't tell whether this is a lie or not, I can't tell whether I'm being duped, I can't tell whether this is serving man and greed and power, or whether it's really meant to design to be helpful to me. I can't. So you put those there, you know. You don't. Maybe it's not in your in basket. You know, maybe it's just left in your in basket, and you're just not going to file it today. You're going to address these issues to see whether or not they make you stronger perspective-wise. To see then you can maybe bring this down to a level that's a little closer. Maybe it doesn't come all the way in to the point where you can throw it out. Maybe it's just you're chipping away at the things you can chip away at, so that there are other bigger things. There's always things you're not going to know. There's always things you're not going to be aware of. There's always people going to dupe you and try to make a gain over you through the evil ways of mankind, believing that this physicality is all there is, and how can they find a way to have their physicality, their pleasure and pain ratio, I like to call it. They get the pleasure and everybody else gets the pain so that they can obtain the pleasure. And then what do they fight for every day? They fight to keep that pleasure. You can call it wealth, you can call it power, whatever it takes, monetary means. I call it the love of money, because money makes these things more likely happening in our world. And then they fight to keep that hold, and they'll be as deluding anyone else as they can. They'll be as power pushing down as they can. They'll be as influential as they possibly can, so that they can keep that pleasure quotient higher, so that all the rest of us have this pain and anxiety and difficult things that we're trying to sort through. And many people will subscribe to vices. They will get themselves caught up in places that they don't know where they are or how they got there, like you, I think, are saying. This is how this happens. Now, the realization of how this happens is the key to desiring to believe that there's enough value in what I'm saying to make that paradigm shift. To believe that what I'm saying is most likely the case. If you do that right now, you would never need to speak with me again or anyone else, because you, even though you're an infant at this moment, you've made that shift. Now, it might take you longer than some. You might go rushing at it. You might do a really good job. But what I'm saying is you wouldn't need to then do another thing. That would do everything. Right there, that one tool. And you watch a lot of my videos, that one tool, I give it away. It's like, you know, you ever seen like National Treasure and you go, man, you don't know the value of negotiation. You gave up your best chips. No, it's because it belongs to you. This is why I don't charge. I give it away. It's the most valuable thing, and I don't own it. And I don't dare profit on it, because if I do, I am keeping the little children from coming and not giving them a glass of water, and I would be doomed to the worst penalty that I could have. So that's why it's free. Now, when you believe there's anything to this that I'm saying, you make that paradigm shift. You start thinking like that. Now, I would be glad to be your friend and talk to you every step along the way. No problem. Okay? But you wouldn't need it if you saw what I'm saying as a value and incorporated it. You wouldn't need it. You can have it. That's what I'm here for. Whatever way I can help. But you don't need it. All right. Now, be glad and happy that you have health, family, job. Things could be worse. You're right. Take the things that have happened to you that are negative and see them as, these are all examples that have been gifted to me. Look at the Sermon on the Mount. People that are against you can help you in ways to find blessing more than any of the good things. A lull and increasing leisure and having what you want can make you dim and run towards things of evil. But endurance, sacrifice, persecution can cause you to become blessed and valuable to yourself and others, because you see them as what they are. So these things that have happened to you badly, don't hate those people. Be glad that God allowed those things to be shown to you so that you could even reach out and even start to see these examples through your own life of what we're talking about now is most likely the case. Then be thankful those are there so that you can rise. When you rise, you don't outdo and go to other illegal entities to push down these others. You become merciful and empathize, and you see that they're in the muck. Your very next tendency is going to be to realize they need help. This is where you become, like I, willing to serve. You realize why they're there like they are. They're not making a gain. They're losing even that which they have. But because you've seen, you will be given more. That's what Jesus was talking about. And that's what's going to happen to you. When you look at these negative factors around you, you're going to be glad and thankful that they were given to you by grace for you to see as what they are. And then rise. Change your world, change your life, change your mind, change your anxiety. Work your brain without meds according to your own realness that you are. And rise and then see these nasty things, but see them as potential. Things that you can make better. So you're not only going to obviously help yourself, that's the easy part. Especially in the physical world, and these things that are so obvious. Why would you help them? That's the non-obvious part. Why would you believe things I can't prove to you? That's the non-obvious part. These things through your Conscious Counseling 101 experience of use of the tools, if you accept those tools, will make all those things available as tools to you as well. The worst things that happen to you will become the greatest things that happen to you because you'll be aware of what the makeup of them is, and you'll see how shallow the makeup of them is. Those people that want to do evil things against you, it's like I said, I think I said in the last video, I'll say it again, Morpheus. You can win because they're defined by a very limited set of rules that can't be altered. And you have busted through that. You have no limited rules, infinite ability to rise and see. When you see, you won't have to dodge bullets. You'll see what they are. You won't succumb to any of it. You won't succumb to any of the evils or ills. Even though they may affect you in this physical realm, they can do no harm to you. None. Even if they take your life. Okay? Because you, before that ever happened, became all that you were created to be. If another day allows you to live longer and you can do more servitude, fine. If another day doesn't allow you, fine. Just like Jesus when he was sweating blood when he prayed. If there's another way, please show me the other way. You may say that too. Don't show me pain. Give thanks. Say the Lord's Prayer. Give thanks that you have what you have. But be merciful and empathetic and ever hardened. Find even a harder time every day looking at these other things that you know when you save yourself and you bail your own boat out the water that's in it, save yourself from sinking. Oh my gosh, your work's just beginning. Now you see why they're what they are. Try ever harder to then help them. Because all this is going to do, if you follow what I'm saying, is make you aware of everything. Conscious awareness, heightened conscious awareness, is a gift, but with great power comes great responsibility. And that's what you're going to have to take on. So the saving yourself in the physical realm that you're talking about, I can't be 100% sure if you don't have something that's so outside the realm in your mind that's going on with your anxieties that you can't taper it down. You could have a problem that is beyond your capability. I'm not going to say, trust what I'm saying, listen to me. I doubt it is, because you sound straightforward. I'm going to just say, if you are on an even keel regular person capability track that these tools will work, and you will become heightened conscious and aware. And this will take you down a road where you might want friends like me because you'll want to know someone else is around that can empathize and talk to, because you'll find more and more and more the road will become very lonely. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this and finding people like you, because I'm already there. I already know what it's like. And I am going to be there for you, because what a terrible person I'd be if I wasn't, since I now know what it's like for you. So that's where the servitude comes from. That's what heightened consciousness is about. You right now have all the tools you need to find those things. Start your road. Make the first step. Change right this minute. And then the length of time and how much energy you put into it is up to you. But you should see results very, very soon. Because the mindset governs. As a man thinketh, so he is. The mindset governs. And I believe that there's more than the mindset also governing us. You don't have to believe that, but give it a leap of faith, at least as far as it's possible. And put that in your arsenal as you do it. That's the baby. Don't throw it out with the bathwater.